LIVEcast, LIVEcast, welcome to the LIVEcast, 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 welcome to the show. LIVEcast, LIVEcast, welcome to the LIVEcast, 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 welcome to the show.
What do we value more, persons or power? That's the question at the heart of morality. It's the question that will confront you from the moment that you wake to the moment that you sleep each and every day. What will you value today, persons or power? Will you use persons to serve power, or will you use power to serve persons? Park that thought and then come with me to London to the Court of Protection on the 21st of June 2019, 4 days ago as I've recorded this. Now, I'm aware that this ruling was overturned yesterday on Monday, thank God, but let me take you through the decision on the 21st. On Friday, a judge with a long history of pro-abortion activism ruled that a pregnant mother must have an abortion. Never mind that her child is at 22 weeks gestation. Never mind that the mother herself does not want the abortion. Never mind that the grandmother, in this case a former midwife, is pledging to look after the child. Never mind that the family is Roman Catholic and believes fervently in the right to life of this little one. Never mind that the child's own social worker does not want the abortion and is willing to arrange together with the family for the safe birth and care of this child. Nevertheless, Justice Natalie Leven ruled that the unborn child should die because it was in the best interests of the mother. The mother has moderately severe learning difficulties and a mood disorder, and despite saying she wants her child to live, the judge opined, "I think she would like to have a baby in the same way that she would like to have a nice doll." In reality, though, Leven said, "I think the woman would suffer greater trauma from having a baby removed from her care because it would be, at that stage, a real baby." I imagine that Leven said this while stroking a hairless cat and wearing a coat made entirely of Dalmatians. Just enter into the thought world of Justice Leven just for a second, if you dare. Apparently, it's better to dismember the child in utero while it's not a real baby. I know, we'll have to leave off that pronouncement for now, but let's just go with the judge for a second. What are the alternatives in Leven's way of thinking? You might imagine that one alternative would be for the child to be raised by its extended family, with the grandmother as the chief caregiver and the mother involved as much as her capacity allows. We do have a category for extended family, don't we? I dare say a Nigerian family, the grandmother is Nigerian, I dare say a Nigerian family would have much to teach us about the incredible worth and power of extended families. But having the child raised by its extended family seems to me to be the alternative. Either chop up the baby in utero or entrust it to the wider family who have proved they'll move heaven and earth to care for it. But I honestly don't think that Justice Leven has even considered that alternative. She seems to consider the alternative to abortion to be driving the child to the set of Oliver Twist and leaving it on the doorstep of a Victorian workhouse. But even if that's Leven's alternative to tearing the child limb from limb, Natalie, adoption is a fate better than death, wouldn't you say? Please, would you say that? Otherwise, I fear greatly for the Court of Protection over which you preside. Now, Natalie Leven wants us to know that the decision was a difficult one for her. She said, "I'm acutely conscious of the fact that for the state to order a woman to have a termination where it appears that she doesn't want it is an immense intrusion." You could say that, Natalie. In fact, you do say that all the time in other settings. You have said that throughout your career. Natalie Leven QC has spent a career defending organizations like BPAS, the UK's largest abortion provider. And the central plank of her pro-choice position is the bodily autonomy of women. How dare anyone tell a woman what to do? How dare the powerful intrude into a woman's body? How dare anyone interfere with a woman's right to choose, right? Our body, our choice is the slogan, right? It's one that Leven says she agrees with. But now, once she's in power, now she changes tack. She cries personhood when it suits her, when she has drawn the circle tightly around herself and excluded the persons that she doesn't want in. Then, when she gets in power, she doesn't care about personhood or choice or bodily autonomy. Once Leven has assumed power, she was only made a judge earlier this year, by the way. Now she says to a pregnant woman, "Sit down, shut up, and let your superiors tell you what to do." This is a naked power play, and all in the interests of the greater good, of course. But the greater good of who? The powerful, the NHS Trust, the wider society. Because you know what? Babies are expensive. Fostering and adoption is expensive. But for £1,000 quid, we can get rid of that inconvenience for you. No questions asked. And Natalie Leven, sitting on the bench, enjoying her power, makes a calculation. She says, let's use persons to serve power, and to hell with integrity, to hell with her body, her choice, to hell with that child. But this only highlights the fact that the pro-abortion position has not been about choice anyway. It's all about power, and it always has been. Think about it. The pro-abortion argument says it's pro-life men who are interfering with the bodily autonomy of women. That's what they say. But think about the reality for a second. Think about an unwanted pregnancy. Now think about the man who has caused it. What does he want 9 times out of 10? Is he pro-life? Not usually. And the pressure of a family who, let's say, does not want the expense or inconvenience or perhaps the scandal of an unwanted pregnancy, what are they pressuring the woman to do? And now consider the state, consider the NHS Trust, consider the Court of Protection, consider Justice Leven as she weighs up the costs of having a baby versus not. What does the state want the woman to do? In this case, what is the state forcing her to do? The woman is surrounded by pro-abortion pressure. Women are always surrounded by pro-abortion pressure. But you're telling me it's the pro-life men who are trying to control her? I'll let you in on a secret. Everyone wants control. No matter what your beliefs, everyone wants power. The default setting of the human heart is to make persons serve power. And Justice Leven has shown that to you. If persons get in the way of power, Leven will overpower her opponents. She will overpower all opposition while still mouthing the language of choice. But she is not pro-choice. She is pro-power. That's the natural state of everyone. From the man who impregnated this poor woman to the judge in the Court of Protection, everyone is pro-power. Except for 2 women, the mother herself and the grandmother who is standing for life. They prize persons over power, while Justice Leven attempts to overpower them. Well, thankfully, an appeal court overturned Justice Leven's decision yesterday. And for that, we can say thank God. But really, that just means that Justice Leven has been overpowered temporarily. Leven has temporarily lost the power game, but still power is tops. And while we can celebrate a one-off judgment in the Court of Appeals, while ever power is tops, we should fear. Because surely persons must trump power. It has to be persons before power, hasn't it? But to say that is to say, in the words of Dr. Seuss, a person is a person no matter how small. It's not power that confers personhood. Personhood is already inviolable. It's not earned. You don't have to be strong enough to be welcome in the human family. You don't have to be rich or clever or strong enough. You are a person, and you are as worthy of provision and protection as every other person. You know that, don't you? I hope you know that. But every pro-abortion argument is an argument for power before persons. It says that the unborn must earn their right to be a person. You have to be a certain size or strength or have certain capacities. The pro-abortion position makes personhood dependent on power. And if the little people aren't powerful enough, then the powers that be will eliminate them. That's the pro-abortion argument at its most basic. And the ugliness of Justice Leven's decision merely reflects the ugliness of abortion itself. It is the elimination of the weak by the strong. The pro-life position is the reverse. It's not about taking away power from the powerless woman. It's about enshrining personhood for all. It's about enshrining personhood first so that the powerful cannot ride roughshod over the weak. Now, I'm a Christian. I believe it's persons before power because I believe that is literally true. It doesn't require a court to invent that truth, only to recognize it. Before there was power, there were persons. Before there was a universe, there was Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, persons united in love, persons deferring to one another, persons pouring themselves out for one another, persons who cannot be without the other, persons whose very existence is one of oneness and belonging and mutual love. And then those persons made a world. And that was an exercise of tremendous power, but persons came first, and power serves persons, not the other way around. The alternative is to see that power is ultimate. And every view other than the Christian view believes that power is ultimate. Whether we've come from an explosion or from physical laws or chaotic forces or even from a single Unitarian God, every other story of reality says power comes first and persons come along later. But you know that's not right. You know it's power before, you know that it's persons before power, right? So come home to the one story in which that precious truth makes sense. Come home to Jesus, who didn't just stand up for the little guy, he became the little guy. He used his omnipotent power to serve persons, to serve you. Here's your one shot at escaping the power play. Come home to Jesus. It's June 25th. I'm Glen Scrivener, and you're watching Speak Life.
Hey,
Hello.
how is everybody?
Just my face nice and close to the camera there.
Yeah, people like that. People like that. I'll go behind you. You go in front. That's fine. Hello, everybody. I'm Glen Scrivener,
I'm Paul Feasy.
and together we are Scripts Easy. And yes, so we're diving straight in to the issue that on Friday there was at the Court of Protection. You couldn't make it up, could you? At the Court of Protection, Justice Natalie Leven wanted to force a woman to have an abortion against her wishes. You know, gone are the days when the slogan for pro-choice was safe, legal, and rare. I think we want it now to be safe, legal, and mandatory. This is, an absolutely appalling decision, which, praise God, was overturned on Monday by the Court of Appeals. They haven't yet given their reason for overturning it, and hopefully that means that the whole process will kind of go on and on to the point where hopefully this child is now safe. But isn't it like sad to think, you know, you've got to get the child over the line of 24 weeks before he is safe from being compulsorily aborted?
Yeah, and also because it just seems so bizarre, doesn't it, that with a mother saying, I want the child, and a grandmother who was a former midwife saying, yes, I will help her look after and raise a child, and was it social services as well, saying they thought it was in her best interest to keep the child.
Yep.
And the judge was like, no.
Nah. And the reason given would be there would be psychiatric harm done to the baby. So they're imagine that the mum who has moderately severe learning difficulties, imagine that she freaks out at having the child. She could then cause harm to that baby. So we better kill it. We don't want harm to come to the child. We don't want harm to
come to the baby.
So let's dismember them.
We must kill the child. Yeah.
Absolutely, and what's so scandalous to me is that Natalie Leven, QC, has been, a barrister, a lawyer representing people like BPAS, the largest abortion provider in the UK, and has very firmly been on the pro-abortion side of things for so long. She ascends to the bench to become a judge, and just this year, and then all of a sudden she forces an abortion on somebody. So let's
and it's a bizarre thing as well, because I mean, not only was it bizarre just because of the story, but I was saying to you yesterday, like how do you even enforce that against if someone is unwilling, to actually go through with that, and you're saying it's now the law that we're going to make you do this.
Yeah.
What are they going to do? They're going to come to our house and take her away and strap her down? Like, how's that even going to work?
And that happens in some countries. So in China, in order to enforce the one-child policy, there's like a tax that they've come up with, and if you want to have a second child, you've got to give the government it's something like 20 times the national salary or something, the average yearly salary, is like a lot of money. And there was a case a few years back of a woman who and she was at 38 weeks gestation or something, and the authority forced her to have the abortion. They had to hold her down. She was physically harmed, and then that authority took a photo of her and the aborted child, put it on social media as a warning to anyone who said, if you think you can have a second child, think again.
Yep.
And everybody was in uproar, and everyone says, "Oh, that's outrageous," And then a few years on, here in this country, we want to have forced abortions. And let's just go through a few of the things that Justice Leven said in her decision. She said, I think that the woman in question who was pregnant, I think she would like to have a baby in the same way that she would like to have a nice doll. And what was interesting to me was that the judge sits in judgment upon the choice of the woman. So basically, here is a judge who believes in pro-choice, but only if you make the right choice. And if you don't make the right choice, she's got 100 reasons why what you say you chose was misinformed.
Yep.
And if only you knew what I knew, then you would choose rightly. It's just like when you make choice into the one metric for the morality of something, then actually you have to do some really dodgy things with the person's choice. So yeah, here's a woman who chooses to have the child, but really we see that choice is not the ultimate foundation for the pro-choice argument. I really do think it's power. I really do think it's coercion. And then Justice Levin also said, I mean, this is the real heart of it for me. She says, I'm acutely conscious of the fact that for the state to order a woman to have a termination where it appears she doesn't want it, it only appears that the woman doesn't want the child. But for the state to order the woman to have a termination when she doesn't want it is an immense intrusion. And of course, it's the reverse of what the pro-choice argument traditionally is, which is my body, my choice. And here comes the state and says, actually, I don't care about your choice. I'm going to intrude upon your body in the most sensational way. And you just think, I don't think choice is at the heart of the pro-abortion argument. I do think it's power. I really do. And then the judge said that she believed the woman would suffer more distress if the baby was taken away rather than if it was terminated. I take it that being killed is more stressful than other things. I do take it,
And also that there's this suggestion there, isn't it, that this lady, so it's 22 weeks into the pregnancy, that this girl is just going to have an abortion and just up and away the next day, just right and dandy, as if there will be no effect at all.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about that it's going to be at least some form of induced labour and removal at that stage, because of the stage of development you're at.
Yeah.
To suggest that in no way is going to be
stressful
or traumatic.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, they're saying, she's got the mental age of... It was saying anywhere between 6 to 9.
Yeah.
It was different on different places. It was hard to... I mean, and again, that's hard to pin down. I mean, if you know any 9-year-olds, they're all at different stages anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
But, I said I've got a 7-year-old and she understands what a baby is and, like, the process of you have a pregnancy and give birth to a baby. So, if this woman is at that kind of age of mental development, there's still going to be this thing where she's going, well, what's happened to the baby and where's the baby? And, she's not just going to forget about it, is she?
No.
Wake up and be like, oh.
Yeah. And that's
Move
always...
on.
But that's right at the heart of the UK's abortion laws. Like the 1967 Abortion Act says that it amounts to abortion on demand because all you've got to do is prove that there's some kind of harm to the mother. And of course, the harm that is most usually cited is psychological harm. But that is to say that there is psychological harm to having the child, but there's no psychological harm to having an abortion. Like this is an incredibly traumatic thing.
Yeah.
And the regret that people have after having abortions, but that is not weighed up. No one is weighing up the trauma of having the baby versus the trauma of the abortion. The trauma of the abortion is just scrubbed from the equation. So, this idea that having an abortion is like having your appendix out is a nonsense. And then the judge says that the woman would suffer more distress if the baby was taken away because it would be a real baby as opposed to in utero when it's not a real baby. And then it seems like she, off the cuff, was trying to explain her thinking there because real baby, where does that come from? And then Justice Levin said, pregnancy, although real to her, doesn't have a baby outside her body she can touch. And you're like, what? And what she's doing is she's scrambling around trying to explain why the baby inside the womb is not a real baby, but the baby outside kind of is. But then she's using language of the baby as a pregnancy. of course, the baby is not a pregnancy. Pregnancy is what you have when you have a baby. But using the language of the baby as though it's a pregnancy, and then she says, pregnancy, although real to her, doesn't have a baby outside her body she can touch. And you just see that when you fail to name things correctly, language breaks down, logic breaks down. It is literally madness. Literally madness, this pro-abortion position. So, praise God, it was overturned by the Court of Appeals. But it does seem to me that why is it being overturned? Are we recognizing the right to life of the unborn so that it's being overturned? Or are there other factors at play in terms of why it's being overturned? Because what's going to happen ongoingly? What's going to happen with the next case that comes up? We don't know. But that's why we've got to come back to it's persons who are important more than power. The personhood of you and I is inviolable. It is a dignity that cannot be granted by courts. It can only be recognized by courts. And it is not something to be earned because of our own strengths. It's got to be something that comes first. And then you use power in the service of persons. Unfortunately, our whole sinful flesh is about using other persons to serve my power. And that really, I think, is the pro-abortion position. It's using persons to serve power. And if persons are not powerful enough, then the powerful can overrule and eliminate them. So what do we need to do? Let's return to Trinitarian theology. Let's return to there's Father, Son, and Spirit who love one another and are bound together in these relationships of self-giving love before they ever exercise power towards the world. We have come from persons, and those persons then exercise power. Power first, and then... persons first, and then power. And this is the one worldview that actually has persons first. Love comes first, and then power. And actually, we use power to serve love. We don't use persons. We don't use love to serve power. Only really when people come back to Christ, people come back to the true triune God. Only then, I think, will we really overturn this power-hungry view that persons have to prove themselves. Only then can Dr. Seuss's words really be true. A person's a person, no matter how small. Once we come back to Christ, I think we'll start to see a person's a person, no matter how small. And then the pro-life position kind of comes out. Jess Hancock has said, these stories are like something out of an Orwellian nightmare, I guess. She was going to say, yeah, absolutely. For the state to step in like this is just bizarre. It used to be safe, legal, and rare, and now it's safe, legal, and mandatory. If the state so determines. Really scary stuff. But lest you think that we just want to line up on the right side of the political divide and sort of show our pro-life credentials because somehow we're politically on the right. Actually, let's kind of switch gears now to have a go at the ascendant right at the moment, politically speaking. Because the other thing that was in the papers, I think it was on Friday as well, was the argument between Boris Johnson and his girlfriend, whose name I forget now.
No, I don't know what it was.
I don't know who she is. But Carrie Simons or Simmons. So they had this massive bust-up on the eve of Boris Johnson versus Jeremy Hunt for the Tory party leadership and therefore for the prime ministership. And so there's lots of issues going on there. What do you think?
When did we ever think we'd be saying those words?
I know. Boris Johnson and Jeremy Hunt battling out. It could have been Gove. It was this close to being Bojo versus Gove again.
Yeah.
Round 2.
Yeah.
And it's these two who will be the next prime minister of the United Kingdom, and so now the question of character comes, because it's obviously financially and politically motivated for his neighbours in Camberwell to leak this fight to the press. You would assume.
Well, yeah, you would assume.
And so I'm sure they've been, paid for this, And the police themselves came around to Boris Johnson's flat that he's been sharing with Carrie Symonds, and no charges, everything's fine, but there was a lot of yelling, there was smashed things, she yelled out, "Get off and get out," a number of times. And of course, he has shacked up with her because he's left his wife for her, and this is not his first infidelity. And then the question becomes, is that relevant? Is that relevant to the Tory leadership tussle? Is that relevant for the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom? The fact that he's been unfaithful to his wife, does that matter? I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's a kind of question that people have raised before, I guess, in other situations, about whether, does someone's private life make a difference to how they do their job, and some people's attitude is very much, isn't it, that as long as they do their job and it does, what goes on in their private life doesn't interfere with that, and as long as it's not anything illegal or stuff like that, does it matter? And I think, like, as Christians, we're in a, I mean, maybe it depends, do you think, on what the position is? So, I mean, we would obviously say, if we were thinking about someone who's going to be our pastor, we would say it totally matters what your character is like at home.
Yes.
Behind closed doors. You should be a good, upright person.
Yes.
And not just turning up on Sunday, doing the things you're supposed to do, and then chopping off home.
Yeah.
And I completely see that. And I would be bothered by any conduct that wasn't like that. Do I care about the shop assistant who serves me in Tesco's? Not really. If I'm honest.
Do you care about the head teacher of your child's school?
Well, that's another one, isn't it? So, or just any teacher.
Yeah.
So, how would I feel if I was out? So, if on the weekend I see my child's teacher and they're just absolutely wasted off their face.
Why are you seeing them absolutely wasted, Paul? In what setting are you while this is happening?
My work as a street pastor.
Okay, all right. Handing out bottles of water.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
But but then there are questions there, aren't there, about... So again, that's different to the church thing, isn't it? Or is it? I'm just... Because if they rock up on Monday to Friday, absolutely sober and do their job fine, above reproach, doesn't matter what they do on Saturday and Sunday or Friday night, know. So, like, in a church setting, we definitely see it works. Now, for someone like Boris Johnson, though, the kind of role you're going to be in, well, let's hope he's not in. But I mean, it's less. It doesn't matter what you get. It's
the alternative.
It doesn't look good anyway, does it? But if he gets in, I think character does matter. Because and like, if someone is, I don't know which wife he's on now. Well, he's not on a wife now, hasn't he?
No.
I don't know how many he's had.
Yeah.
But he's definitely had a few kind of infidelities. Yeah. And everything would say to me, as I'm examining that, I would say, well, there's something in your character which is not to be trusted. You're not someone of integrity.
Well, especially, like, you count on him fulfilling his promises. So with politicians, you are literally taking them at their word. They promise certain things. They have to deliver on certain things. And so, like, looking at their life and seeing, okay, well, you actually, before God and a whole congregation and before your wife, you promised this stuff and you didn't come through on it. It's fairly relevant at that point, whether you can trust the promises that they make. And I think to the degree that you have to trust me, I don't have to trust the Tesco, checkout person.
No.
But I do have to trust my teacher a bit more. We do have to trust our politicians quite a bit.
Do you think, and I don't know the ins and outs of Boris's life, do you think it would make a difference? Because we say, you stood up and you made these promises and you've not come through on them. There's a sense in which none of us come through on those things in the way we should. Yep. Do you think there would be a difference if Boris Johnson appeared like he was in any way repentant for the things he does?
Totally. Totally.
Like
Yeah.
if there would be a big difference between someone who was shown publicly to have, had some kind of infidelity, but was repentant and stuff, compared to someone who's just
absolutely. Because character matters, and one part of character is admitting when you're wrong and being repentant, being humble. That wouldn't that be something?
All of which disqualifies you for being politicians, doesn't it? Like...
Yeah. But I mean, the argument is often made, like in the States, when they say we're electing a president, not a pastor.
Right.
And whenever that argument, which is sound as far as it goes, but whenever that argument is deployed, it's usually because the person you want to win is a bit of a rascal.
Yeah. Not naming any names. Not pointing any fingers.
But there's another blonde-haired leader of a nation who's also been unfaithful and is on his whatever nth wife and has cheated on many wives while they're pregnant, cheated on them with Playboy centerfolds, etc. Does that matter? And I would like to say that the argument that wants to defend that and says, no, but if we get the right person in place, they can wield power for our good projects, and if they wield power for the good, then it doesn't matter about their character. And I want to say at that point, well, look out, because I think that is using persons to serve power. And I think we want to use power to serve persons. I think the person comes first, and the person is important. And
is there a naivety? If we're Christians, is there a naivety in thinking that you can divorce someone's, the role they do from their character?
Yeah.
Say as long as they get the job done, doesn't matter what goes on over there.
Yeah.
Like as Christians, surely we should recognise that like our very being, the fact we are sinful flesh, plays into everything.
Yeah.
And even even the good things we do,
right,
are part of our character. We take that with us everywhere. You don't turn up at work and just become someone else. Right. So there's always going to be some overlap.
Yeah.
And so your character is always going to influence the way you do your role.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're if in your private life you're happy to completely, screw everyone over, it's probably quite likely in the office you're going to be prepared to screw everyone over. And I don't see how you could compartmentalise that and say, oh well, it'll be fine over there, but because it won't get into this area of life.
Yeah. I mean, God is gracious, and He has used very compromised individuals to do good things in the world. He's used people who've led totally duplicitous lives. And managed to work good through them, and even to the extent that not just bad people, but people who are active enemies of God's people. Yeah. In the Bible, you see, like people who have taken the Israelites into exile or opposing kings, and yet God has used them for His purposes. Yeah. But it'd be hard to say if people would have voted for that if they. Yeah. Cyrus is not then, invited to come and lead Israel and to become a Levite, and all that. So, persons before power, and I think if we really grasp that, I think it would have, it would bite both on the political left and on the political right. I think persons before power on the political left would push you towards pro-life. Because it would push you towards honouring personhood and not just overpowering the little guy. But also, it bites against the political right as well, because it would say, well, don't just use power to get the job done, but honour persons. And therefore, it does matter. The character matters in politics. And I don't know how to weigh it against various other things. I don't know how you would weigh Donald Trump versus other Republican candidates, how you would weigh Donald Trump against Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump against Joe Biden, Donald Trump against, whatever other alternatives that there are out there. But to simply say that it doesn't matter, that is false. It must be false. Our lives are meant to be fruit. We are trees and we bear fruit. Jesus is constantly saying that. He doesn't say that we are these neutral bricklayers who get out, and it doesn't matter what we did behind closed doors. We can just build a tower. It's that we are trees, and organically fruit comes out of our person. Person matters. So I had a question from Dan Dwelly. Theresa May was a churchgoer, and it didn't help her much. Well, but I mean, her character, people did praise, didn't they? I mean, even though a lot of people said, okay, incompetent, didn't really get the job done.
She was
really.
lovely.
She was lovely. But I do take heart from the fact that every Sunday she was in church, actually saying sorry to God for stuff. And you just imagine, can you imagine on the next day in the cabinet meeting, going around the room and just everybody taking turns in saying, I've sinned before God and before others in thought and word and deed, so I take heart from that fact. And Dan says, and I think Hunt is as well. Is that a good thing? Yeah. I think that definitely is a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, but then it will depend as well in what is, there are some people who almost would say they could put aside their Christianity when they walk into the office in order to do the job in the way they think they should be doing it. And I don't know what Hunt is like, is that the case for him?
Yep.
Or would he go in with some kind of Christian values? I don't know.
All else being equal, yeah, I think it's a good thing. It's a point in their favour, I would say, as a Christian. But it's not the be all and end all, and I can well imagine circumstances in which a churchgoer and an atheist are up against each other, and I can well imagine circumstances of voting for the atheist, of course.
Yeah, and also I mean, although I would say maybe being a churchgoer is a point in favour, like, I'm also quite hesitant just to say, like, oh, well, this one goes to church, therefore, because lots of people go to church and it's just a Sunday thing they do, and there is that nominal Christianity, and I don't know what Jeremy Hunt's Christianity is like, so I'm not going to comment on that. So, without knowing them and what their faith is actually like, having met someone like Tim Farron, actually seemed like a very personal, personable guy, and actually talked about his faith very clearly. And as I listened to him, I thought, here's someone who clearly loves Jesus and wants to honour Jesus in a very difficult field and has faced the flak for it. But that won't be the case for everyone who goes to church and is a Christian and gets into politics.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Lee Fernie has said, the summary list for recruiting someone for paid Christian ministry is character, convictions, competence, and chemistry. That's often reversed in politics. Very good insights. So in politics, it's chemistry, then competence, then convictions, and finally character. Within the church, it's character, convictions, competence, and chemistry. Good point. Paige Treadway Wright says, also, Cyrus wasn't on the ballot. That complicates things a bit. Yep, we didn't have to vote for Cyrus. Lee came back and said, even Cyrus or Darius was pragmatic and employed Daniel, who had great character, so that he wouldn't suffer any loss. So, so character did matter within the regime. And character was identified and was useful. Amy Burdett Farrer made this great point. Good theologians as well have this sort of split thing, and I had the same thought in mind. She said, think about Karl Barth and his sinful behaviour at home. He had an at least emotionally adulterous relationship with his secretary, who he even moved into the family home, and it was at least emotionally adulterous. The details are murky. But Amy says, does that mean that we ignore all of his work? I don't think so, but we have to recognise that the fruit of character of someone's life is more important for their own personal life, and only their good works will benefit others if that is the case. It's a complicated thing, that personal private split. Dan Dwelly says, no scandals as far as I know for May. Which is great, isn't it? That's, it's because it does wonders for the office of Prime Minister if there are no scandals during this particular Prime Minister's stay, because our communities and our cultures run on trust, and every single scandal breaks down trust. And so, the damage that is done by a leader with poor character who makes us distrust, that damage will go on for decades. Like it really will. And there can be short-term gain for some people, and maybe your guy is in power right now, and you're getting some short-term wins. There is a much longer-term game to be playing, and that's all about trust. And if promises are broken and if scandals erupt, then that trust is just so hard to restore. Dan Dwelly said Jeremy Hunt commissioned the recent Christian Persecution Review. That's true.
That is true. I did see that, actually. And he was kind of flagging that up quite a lot recently, wasn't he? Which has kind of slipped my mind. So, that's, seems like a positive.
Boy done good.
In his thing, so.
Who knows? So, yes, who knows who we're going to get, Hunt or Bojo.
At the end of the day, I mean, you just want someone who's going to have integrity, and someone who is going to put the needs of others before their own selfish desires.
Yeah.
Ultimately, not just doing what's easy for them and benefits them.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know the two of them. If I had to pick between the two, on which one would be more like that, I'd probably end up going for Hunt.
Okay.
But looking at the issues there were a few years ago with the NHS, I know a lot of people who I know personally who are very unhappy with the way a lot of that went, and I think the NHS is a really important thing for us in this country.
Yeah.
So
yeah. But whichever way it goes, it's not like in the first century the Apostle Paul was writing to people and Nero is on the throne, people. Nero, and he's just like, well, the gospel is going forward. Churches are being planted. People are coming to Christ. He was a person of hope and optimism, even when a guy who was a little bit compromised was in the seat of power. So. Let's hold these things in the perspective that they ought to be in. Dan Dwelly, hashtag Glen for Prime. Is that Amazon Prime?
Boris didn't look that bad, actually.
Glen for Prime Minister. Well, thank you, Dan. I've got one vote. One vote.
Yeah, the thing is, though, the thing we've got to remember with all this, we've said it about Brexit and all that stuff as well. At the end of the day, God is on the throne. None of it was taken by surprise, and you never know when when we read particularly Old Testament stories, and there were these terrible kings on the throne, and they were on the thrones for years. You've got to think those people, they didn't know necessarily going through it. Oh, here's a big picture, and there's a plan, and it's all going to work out in this way. It must have just been quite terrible at times. And the reality is actually, God was working through that, even if they couldn't see it. And even if we end up with someone who's terrible, or even if you're the kind of person who looks at what's going on in other countries, where there's kind of people in leadership, and you go, "Oh, this is terrible." God is still in control of it. God is not surprised by it. He's still working. He's still on the throne. He's going to use that, even in ways we can't see, and may never know until we come out the other side. But
Jesus for Prime Minister.
Jesus
for Prime Minister. He's got my vote, and literally he is. Because what does Prime Minister mean?
Already, he's got his cabinet ready.
What, Peter, James and John? Sitting on his right and on his left in thrones. But Prime Minister means chief servant.
Yes.
So who is?
Yeah.
Who is the Prime Minister?
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah, exactly.
Rejoice.
The greatest of all the servants.
Rejoice.
Yeah.
Rejoice. So Glen for Prime, I like that as a hashtag. Speaking of Prime...
Optimus.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about Amazon.
Ah, yes.
On Amazon Prime this month, they have released a new show called Good Omens. And they've made that from the novel by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman, which is a kind of it seems... I mean, Terry Pratchett for me is sort of teen-based. Would you say his audience... You probably start reading them when you're
Maybe.
12, 13.
I knew some people who read it. I only read one or two, and it never really quite grabbed me. But
okay. I read Hogfather, and that's it. But yeah.
I think I read the one about death.
Okay. they've all got death, and they're like Discworld and all that. They're fun, they're fun. But he's an atheist.
It's all about death.
It's fun.
It's still fun.
But literally, that is what it's like. Like death is Lord in these universes that Terry Pratchett creates.
Yeah.
And yet he's very impish about it and jolly as the world goes up in flames. It's that sort of thing. So Good Omens has been made into a TV series, 6 episodes on Amazon Prime. It came to my attention really mainly because a Christian group in the States got a petition together of 20,000 people wanting them to cancel Good Omens because it would make people dabble in the occult and things like this. But they petitioned Netflix to take it down. When actually it's on Amazon Prime.
And I don't know if you saw Netflix's response. Netflix just tweeted out, "Okay, we won't make any more." Which I thought was brilliant.
Well, we'll see my video from last night, which mentions some of the comeback from some of those guys. But let's have a look at my video from last night on Good Omens, Bad Theology. Religious groups have an uncanny, some would say miraculous ability to shoot themselves in the foot when it comes to public relations. As a Christian minister, my heart sank when I saw this headline. Thousands petition Netflix to cancel Amazon Prime's Good Omens. US Christian group condemns Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett's story as making Satanism appear normal, but petitioned the wrong company. That's right, it's on Amazon Prime. They petitioned Netflix. No matter what kind of PR that Christian groups attempt, they only seem to be able to pull off the bad kind of PR. And at the same time, Amazon Prime have shown the way, turning this gaffe into good PR. They tweeted out, "Hey Netflix, we'll cancel Stranger Things if you cancel Good Omens." Well played, Amazon Prime. And of course, here's what this story made me do. It's what I imagine thousands and thousands of people did once they read about the petition. It made me want to watch the show even more. So I did, and I enjoyed it hugely, especially the performances by Michael Sheen and David Tennant. They were delicious.
Get thee behind me, foul fiend. After you.
We have nothing whatsoever in common. I don't even like you.
You do.
Did it normalize Satanism? No, I don't think so. But it did do something, because everything influences our spiritual views all the time, right? Everything does. Love Island influences my spiritual views. Not that I've ever seen a single minute of it. I guess I'm a little bit like the petitioners in that sense, having not seen the program that I object to. Teletubbies influences my spiritual views. Both of them fortify my belief in diabolical powers, probably even more than Good Omens does. But listen, I suggest to you that the influence of Good Omens will not be to normalize hell for people. It will perhaps trivialize hell, but mostly it will stigmatize heaven, and it will leave the viewer with a warm, folksy, but ultimately groundless humanism. But you'd have to actually watch the show to know that that's what its effect would be. And given that the authors of the petition didn't even know which streaming service the show was on, I'm going to guess they hadn't the foggiest clue about its content. Now, of course, Good Omens has some major theological errors, and of course it trivializes serious matters and casts aspersion on the Bible and on the character of God from the beginning to the end of it. But I'm not going to ask or expect anyone to pull the show, because when the Bible speaks of God's name being blasphemed among the nations, the Bible does not blame the nations. Blasphemers gonna blaspheme, as Taylor Swift once almost sang. But Romans 2 says God's name is blasphemed among the nations because of you, people of God. You see, we are the problem. We are the reason that people trivialize spiritual powers and cast aspersions on the character of God. We cause blasphemy in the way that we carry the name of God out into the world. Of course, Gaiman and Pratchett have faulty theology, but they have faulty theology because we have preached faulty theology. We have lived faulty theology. We have embodied faulty theology. How so? Well, let me give you a flavor of Good Omens. I'll try not to give away too much more than the trailer does, but there will be one small spoiler here, so if you want to watch the show absolutely... There we go.
Yeah.
We won't give it all away. So I'm just putting in the comment section now a link to that video from last night, so you can check out the rest of it. You haven't seen Good Omens
No, I've
yet,
not
have you?
seen it yet. I saw it kind of advertised on Prime.
Yeah.
I think, and I
Yeah.
thought, oh, and I added it to the watch list.
Yeah.
Then discovered a few days later, clearly I should have been petitioning against it. So I was clearly a terrible human being. So
Now, I mean, it mocks God. It does. And mocking God is bad, right?
yep.
But I'm not sure that I expect those outside the church to do anything but mock God.
Sure.
Given my doctrine of humanity. So mocker's going to mock, blasphemer's going to blaspheme. But yeah, my main thing is what Pratchett and Gaiman are parodying is actually what the church has been preaching. And actually, I do think the church has been preaching a funny view of the end of the world, and they are making fun of that. What are those novels that
Left
were made
Behind?
Left Behind?
Tim LaHaye and
Tim
someone
LaHaye.
else.
They are parodying that kind of
thing.
view
Yeah.
of Armageddon.
Yeah.
Which is bizarre because you go to the Bible and you read Armageddon and it's all build up and it's all saber rattling and then nothing happens. Like Jesus just comes and he just wins and evil is just kind of cast away. In 2 Thessalonians he overcomes them by the breath of his mouth and the splendor of his coming. The eventual punch up between good and evil is like a punch up between light and darkness. It's like,
Yeah, gone.
see you later, darkness. And there's an unhealthy view of heaven and hell as the great dichotomy with earth in the middle. And that's what Good Omens is based on. There's heaven and hell having a punch up, and earth is stuck in the middle, and earth is just a battleground, and earth's going to go up in smoke. And so the heroes in Good Omens are the humans who managed to save the world from these warring factions. And so those who are standing up for peace on earth and standing up for the world, they are the heroes in Good Omens. And I just want to sit down with the makers of the program and say, actually, in the Bible, those who are on the side of earth, they are the good guys. But those who are on the side of earth, that is heaven. And the only reason heaven ever has a punch-up with hell is that hell is trying to destroy the world. So actually, to have a great punch-up, or to have at least a battle between heaven and hell, is not to destroy the world. It is to save the world. And there's so much that's wrong in Good Omens. But I think the origin of where they go wrong is the church. So I think the first critique that we should make is not to critique the theology of non-Christians. Because of course their theology is going to be erroneous. But I think the first people to critique are the Christians who allow people like Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman to ridicule things. Because the Bible itself is not ridiculous. But what we have made the Bible into is ridiculous. So that's my basic thing. If you want to see more about it, then on YouTube, we'll bring it out soonish. Maybe today or tomorrow.
No, it is on YouTube already. You mean
it's
on
on
Facebook?
YouTube, on Facebook.
Yeah.
On Facebook, we'll bring it
Get
out.
that one out. Yep.
So it's already on YouTube. It's in the comments section of this Facebook Live. Check it out. And do please, in YouTube, can you hit both subscribe and click the bell? The bell is really important because subscribe means nothing anymore. Subscribe, just because you're subscribed to us doesn't mean that YouTube are going to show you our videos. YouTube are going to show you whatever the algorithm dictates. So unless you hit the bell button, you're really not going to learn about our new videos. So do subscribe to us. That'll help us get further up in the algorithm. Do click the bell. That'll help you to see the videos. And do share it with your friends. That'll be great.
Yep.
Brilliant. Well, we've got some more comments. We can deal with those in the old-fashioned way, via typing on the keyboard. We shall do that. But thanks so much for joining us in the comments, you guys, on Facebook Live. We do this every Tuesday at 1 p.m. So if you only ever catch up on this on the podcast, that's when we're live. That's when you can catch us and see us in all our...
Yeah, I was wondering where you're going to go with that.
Yeah. Just see us. You can see us on Facebook Live, but you can hear us on our podcast. You can watch us on YouTube. And, yeah. lots more content coming out, including a response video.
To Philosophy Tube.
Yep.
Which is a channel on YouTube, and it's worth checking out. It is worth checking out. If you very high production values. There's something a little bit Black Mirror-esque about the one we watched.
Yes.
Just it might be a bit dark for some people.
Yes. It's always dark.
But yeah, I've seen it. It's quite dark.
Yeah.
But in his video, he's talking about the abortion debate. He's looking particularly at the violinist kind of
analogy,
which has been around for years and years, and kind of picks that apart a little bit. And kind of has a bit of a go at it, and actually we're going to be doing a bit of a response to that.
Using the wisdom of Dave Brennan.
So actually, yes, who's from Brephos and who's interviewed here, and you can see the whole interview. We're going to be using bits from that interview. You can see the whole interview on YouTube and on Facebook already. So I think on YouTube, if you go to our channel and look for a Voice for the Voiceless interview with Dave Brennan, you should find the interview there. I don't know how easy it is to find. It's a bit more tricky on Facebook to find videos from a while back, but YouTube is the easiest place to find it.
Go on YouTube, subscribe, click the bell, and and stay tuned for that response video and a whole bunch of other content. But that ought to do us for today.
Yep.
Thank you very much for your company, and see you next week.
Yep, take care. We'll see you soon. Bye.